Hey folks, Ken here. Thought I'd do a quick update. Beautiful weather here in Dublin um, over the last couple of weeks and due to continue. Not hugely warm now, sort of 17 to 19 degrees, but been very sunny um, and you know, usually nice for ponds, but hasn't been great for me, and I'll explain now in a second. Not disastrous, but just one of those things. So I mentioned the last time, first of all, to go through my list. Um, the fish were flashing a lot, and I'd taken out a couple of them and scraped them and found nothing. And was standing looking at them one evening. That was about 9:45, although still fairly bright there, just over a week ago, and just saw a couple of them flashing multiple times, and I got the pan net and scooped it in, and believe it or not, I managed to catch both of those exact fish on their own. I'll explain the goldfish up the top pond in a second. Um, and scraped them and went in. Certainly nothing from a fluke perspective, but did see these little sort of round, what looked like bubbles on the microscope, and I wasn't sure what they were. Were they bubbles? Were they something more sinister? So luckily there's a few of us pond keepers here in Ireland on a Facebook group, and I was able to video what I was seeing. I might just drop it in at the end of this and send it, and one of the guys confirmed fairly quickly that's very likely costia that you have. And I don't know about you guys in the UK, but certainly in Ireland here, there's a few of us that had costia with no particular explanation for it. Now I did add 3 new fish just over a month ago, but you know, you'd imagine I would have had problems almost instantly, and they were fairly well quarantined. Other people had not added anything at all and still got costia, so whether it was the conditions that just favoured it, I don't know. But anyway, I did treat. I'll show you the treatment. So I used Kushuri, Formalin and Macrolide Green. Did 2 treatments. Now, like the fish, particularly in the evening, were flashing badly. I did notice a couple still flashing. Now, whether that's a hangover from the treatment or not, I don't know. It's just that little platinum Ogon. I noticed this morning. I might have, if he continues, I'm going to take him out again and scrape. You'll notice the water clarity is not great. I'll talk about that as well. Now the UV, because of the treatment, has been off for the last more than a week. So that's that. Before I go inside, the other thing was my goldfish that had the tumour unfortunately succumbed. Now I noticed earlier on, you know, in the season, he just was looking very ragged scale wise. The tumour was bigger. He was still eating up to a point, but definitely had gone downhill. Noticed there a few days ago he was down in this corner. Couldn't find him for a while. The water clarity wasn't helping, but did, and he was just stuck in that corner down the bottom. So I took him out. He was still alive, but I just did the decent thing with a bit of clove oil. It's not easy to do, but I just felt, you know, he'd lasted longer than, you know, I've had a few goldfish over the years with tumours and they generally succumb. I found, you know, within a few months he lasted. So we were just thinking, we reckon at least 3 years. And as I say, unfortunately, it was just the clove oil. I've used it on my aquarium fish in the past where, you know, it just gets to that point where you have to do the kind thing, and it just kind of puts them asleep fairly gently. And that was that. So sad on that front. We did move. Well, I asked my son to move 2 goldfish up here. Just so, I noticed this before with the old pond. I had an upper part in the old pond as well, and you can see the lilies are getting eaten and they're in bits now. I think the fish are a bit what's the word, excitable there. There's probably a bit of spawning activity going on, which is not helping the lilies, but they do get eaten. And a local fish guy said to me, "Oh, have you fished there?" And I said, "No, not in that bit of the pond." He said, "I'll stick a couple of goldfish up there," and I did. And they definitely cleared the insects, and the lilies sort of came on. So I said to my son, put 2 in, and as you can see, he's over delivered and put 4 in. But anyway, they're in there. We'll see how they do. But, yeah, the lilies we replanted them. I think I said that in the last video. We split 2 into 4. They're not looking great, but they will come. I'm sure. That's kind of it. The other thing I was trying to do, I have my Heron splitter up. You can probably hear the clicking. I did have a timer, so what I do is I have one of these watering timers normally there, just to feed that between 5 in the morning and 9 in the morning is when I have Heron activity, and it wasn't working. Basically, now I've had it a long time. I didn't take it in during the winter. I should have, although it's been out many other winters and survived. But anyway, I got one on Amazon. With these things now, that one was grand. It was very easy to set. They all seem to be now that there's a maximum time you can set them for, and I got one on Amazon, and it's so bloody complicated for a simple thing. You set it to come on at 4, 5 and go off at 9, but it seems to turn itself on and off during that period. And I came out at 11 o'clock and it was still squirting water, so I boxed it up and it's going back. Why something has to be so complicated? So I've been checking the cameras. I haven't had a Heron visit, but I will. You know, I know they do. This thing, you'll find them on Amazon. It's grand, actually. It works on batteries. I've shown it before. I just have it there during the summer months, and you know, there's a sensor on it there, and as soon as it senses any movement, whether it's a cat or a heron or something, it just squirts water and makes a racket and clears them. So we just go inside and have a chat about what's been going on in there. I'll just turn off the pumps and things because they make an awful racket. So first of all, this is a treatment I use. I think it's a fairly common one. I did have an Evolution Aqua treatment, and as Sod's Law will have it, although I only bought it a year ago, it was out of date in March, and it was the same thing more or less, but I just decided, listen, it's not worth, you know, it probably would have been okay, but I said overnight I could have got this, and that's what I did. I just ordered fresh stuff, and a couple of people had said to me they like the Kushuri stuff. It is good. So I put it in, and hopefully it solved the problem. You'll see, I better turn off the UV as well. Oh, excuse me. The thing is with those treatments though, it turns everything blue. You can see there's, not that it really matters, but the screen is blue. The seals on the drum are gone blue. Whether that will change or not, I don't know. But as I say, it doesn't really matter. But hopefully it's solved the problem. I do have the UV back on. And another thing has happened which makes me question my water clarity, as you saw, isn't great. What I've noticed is, and I cannot find a reason for it, I feed in the bottom pond. And some food gets sucked into the skimmer. The food was appearing in the top pond. The only way for it to get into the top pond is to come in through the filter. The skimmer is the middle line there, comes in, has to go through the drum. Even that is on the clean side of the drum. Go through the biochamber, go back out, get up through the pump and back up to the top pond, and the food has been in one piece. I noticed there was a couple of bits floating, there was other bits had sunk which were obviously there a while, and I am absolutely confused as to how that is happening. Never happened before over the last couple of years. I've checked the drum. I mean, the obvious thing is the drum screen seems fine. I've rotated around and had a look at it. the rubber seals here, so you know the way a drum works, you can see there's a hole there, so the water comes up through the outlets, or the inlets rather, goes through the hole into the center of the drum and then flows out. These rubber things here are to, you know, seal the, you know, the gap between here and the drum. I've put my hand right around those and they seem fine. I mean, the drum's only 2 years old, so it shouldn't be an issue. As I say, the drum screen itself, so how food is getting through the drum, there's also bypasses here, so there's holes there that have caps in them. So for whatever reason, just say the motor in the drum failed and you wanted to still use your biochamber, you could take out those caps that leaves holes and the water bypasses the drum until you get it sorted out. They are both closed fully. I've checked them as well. I've also watched the drum cleaning and the water is very dirty. You can see the dirt there. So I mean, if you even asked my 16-year-old son, he's a bit of a messer. I said, are you putting food in the top pond? He assures me he's not. And this was before the fish were up there, by the way. I was seeing that. It's not that I was feeding the fish that were up there. So I'm kind of confused by that one. I'll just keep an eye on it. The obvious thing was as well, if food is getting sucked into the skimmer, I'm overfeeding the fish. You know, in a single feed, so I've reduced that a bit, so make sure that I give them enough that they just eat so it doesn't get sucked into the skimmer. But it could also be part of my water clarity issue, because if food is getting through the drum, then other larger solids are getting through the drum as well. And you know, is that my water clarity issue? Could I go to the trouble I mentioned in the last video, my UV, the quartz did flood. Did it damage the bulb, although the bulb is still lighting and very bright? Or is it that the drum isn't doing? Now, if anyone's any experienced that with a drum, what to look out for, as I said, I wouldn't expect the screen to be warm and let it warm unless it got physically damaged, and that doesn't, you know, it looks delicate, but it is actually quite strong, the screen. And I have, as I say, spun it around and there's no hole, and it wants to be a substantial enough hole for, you know, the food pellets, especially when they're wet, to get through. And that's certainly not happening. So anyway, if you've any ideas on that, let me know. I'm going to have another check around after this video and see. But the water clarity, I'll give the UV another week or so and see, does it, turn this back on, I'll go back outside. See, does it clear the water? Because, you know, clear water, it's purely an aesthetic thing for looking at the fish. Things over flowing. So that's kind of it. As I say, you can see the water quality there. When you look back, when the fish are at the window, they're grand. When they go back sort of midway in the tank, or down the pond, or down the bottom there, you can see it's no, I've seen worse. You know, I can still see the bottom drain down here, but you can see down there as well, it's a bit, it's on the murky side. I'm gonna have to fish out those bits of those lilies there. The other thing I wanted to mention actually was non-return valves. I'm gonna turn off everything again. My non-return valves, so I explained before, just turn this off again. I have this non-return valve on the return to the upper part of the pond, which the water level is higher than the main ponds. So when this pump was turned off and the valves were open, the water in the top pond, because it's a gravity system, would flow down to the bottom pond to try and equalize both, and the bottom would overflow into the overflow. And if I had a power cut, for example, and that was let go for, you know, a half an hour or so, when the power came back on, because both are equalized and water had overflown from the bottom pond into the overflow, the bottom pond would then be used to top up the back of the pond for the waterfall. It would drop the level of the bottom pond and cut off the pumps, the float switch would cut off the pumps because the water level in the drum would be too low. A bit complicated, but that's what would happen, and then I'd have no filtration until the thing topped up again. And if I was away or wasn't around, you'd be waiting for the trickle flow to top up the pond, which would take a long time. So I put this spring, there's the spring out of it, and I'll tell you why I took it out. So when I turned this on last year, it wasn't too bad. I think I've mentioned it definitely does significantly restrict the flow, and my waterfall isn't exactly flat, and it definitely slowed the flow down enough that it was very obvious the water flow wasn't even. Then what I noticed as well, it started chattering or vibrating, this as well, and I adjusted up and down the flow of the pump, and it was just driving me mad. So what I did eventually was I took the spring out. However, when you take the spring out, there still is a little plastic piece in there which moves up and down and closes when there's sort of backflow. Doesn't work fully. So what I'm going to do is, and I did a bit of reading up on this, and it was plumbers were saying in general, these sort of spring non-return valves are very hard on a pump, that they put a lot of back pressure on and can shorten the life of a pump, and they're also tend to be noisy, and there's not much you can do about it. So what I did was took the spring out for a minute, and it does slow down the in fact, I'm going to turn this back on. I'll go outside and talk about it because it's leaking down. I can hear it going into the overflow. You mightn't notice, but the best thing to do is use one of these flap valves. And what I'm going to do is get one of those, and I'll put it in somewhere on the system. What I can do is take out the plastic bits. I'll leave that other one there. I'll just take out the internals in it. You know, there's no point in messing around with the pipe again, and I'll put in a flap valve, which is what I should have done in the first place. You learn by experience, I suppose. But as I say, that's the update. The drum, the food in the top pond, and the water clarity are kind of my two biggest concerns. You know, and now the only thing is with the water clarity, although still the UV should be doing its job, you know. It's been very sunny almost on a continual basis, and you know, the UV has to work very hard, especially when my pond isn't in shade at all. It's constantly in the sunlight during daylight hours, obviously. So there's a lot going on, but if anyone has any ideas, please post and let me know. So otherwise the fish are doing fine. I mean, even though I had the cost here and there was lots of flashing, there was no sort of clam fins or sulking fish. You know, and I knew sort of when I found it and I needed to get medication, I had a couple of days. I would have definitely, if I had some very poorly looking fish, I would have definitely taken a chance and used the older medication, which probably would have been okay even though it was out of date. But I knew I had time to order stuff, and hopefully I've got it so I'm not scraping again. But I will leave it at that now. Thanks a lot, and as I say, if you have any ideas on my predicaments around drum filters and water clarity, do let me know. Thanks a lot. Cheers.